Hi, welcome to stream. We would love to continue on our series on um, mergers and acquisitions, IPOs. You could think of IPOs as actually a type of acquisition because during an initial public offering, someone's acquiring and buying the stock of a private company for the first time. So we went through a lot of material already. And we're going to try to speed up because of lack of time. I'm going to just roll through the slides really quickly, just in case I'm not able to actually get through all of them. We're kind of hanging out and sharing what we've learned more than teaching at this time, simply because teaching can be a little bit more time intensive. So we're working through the material so that we can physically understand it. And if other people are able to learn from that, I'm excited. But if no one's able to learn from it, but I'm able to learn, that is success. Might seem a little selfish, a selfish approach, but the reality is, I think making a distinction between teaching and studying, and reviewing, might be a good idea. Because I think the bar of teaching someone else is actually higher than teaching yourself or studying or reviewing. So being able to review the material and master it yourself, that's one level of difficulty. Then being able to teach someone else, that's another level of difficulty. And in order to teach other people, you need to teach yourself first. And in our case, we're trying to master teaching yourself so we can move along. This song is pretty magical. I ran this morning to it. Boon Hui Lu, Don't Be Afraid. So she's my favorite Chinese singer. Shout out to Boon Hui Lu. Okay, I'll be right back. And then we're going to dive right in. And we might actually go in afterwards, either with in the same video or another video. We're going to talk about building a company. It's something that I want to think about, and really just free talk. I think keeping my stream really a free talk and just being able to review and talk about anything, whether it's games or company building or music or photography, modeling, artwork, anything I'm interested in, I think that's where the fun's at. So be right back.
Don't be afraid, we can fly. 我一直都在。Don't be afraid of tonight. 别害怕失败。Don't be afraid, let us fly. 你无可取代。面对这世界，即使再危险。
Alright, okay, so in a direct listing, you want to minimize the number of middlemen involved, and the issuing company is acting as a seller, selling to investors who are buying the shares of the company. In what I would call an underwriter's IPO, I've called it something different now. I don't want to call it a traditional IPO. I would call it an underwriter's IPO. In an underwriter's IPO, you're involving more middlemen, more intermediaries. You can't exactly completely do away with middlemen when doing an IPO. You're using the stock exchanges as a middleman, for example, but the direct listing is trying to keep the control of the price discovery in the hands of the issuing company rather than leaving it to a third party under investment banks who would act as underwriters. So this is another way of looking at it from the underwriter's IPO. This would also where we actually make adjustments to our notes. Also, when you're doing notes for yourself, you don't have to do the neatest thing ever. So in this direct listing, you can see the company is listing its shares directly on the stock exchange. They're paying the stock exchange a fee, and they're trying to rely on their own marketing capabilities, and they have no underwriters. But in an underwriter's IPO, the underwriters are getting involved. The underwriters are choosing the price. They're also talking to institutional investors, and they're insuring the IPO. And we're going to dive right into what that means. So you can think of the issuing company again as the seller, the underwriters as a middleman who will help sell the shares, and the roadshow that they're offering is the roadshow is basically your marketing efforts. And it's just a fancy word used by underwriters to pretend they're adding more value than they really are. But I think every company, whether you're doing a underwriter's IPO or a direct listing IPO, you should market your company as well as you can for many, many years leading up to the IPO. And you could technically think of the road show as an extension of all the marketing efforts you've done up to this point. Now you're just specifically targeting investors to buy your shares. In the past, your marketing efforts might have been trying to build the brand, trying to attract customers. Now you're trying to attract investors. The product being sold is the shares being listed, and the place where people are customized or accustomed to buying your shares is on a distribution channel, stock exchanges, the New York Stock Exchange, NASDAQ, Shanghai Stock Exchange, Hong Kong Stock Exchange. So you can think of it as a very basic sales process of, I'm the seller, how many middlemen should I involve, how much marketing, and who are we targeting with our marketing efforts, and ultimately the product are the shares of our company. And so we want to sell as the highest quantity possible at the highest price possible, and we want to work with the best distribution channel partner. For example, in this case I'd actually do a note. A partner might be a distribution channel partner. It might be like NASDAQ or New York Stock Exchange. We're on top of it. We're actually we're moving fast. Okay, so this is my technique, I guess, of thinking about an IPO is, okay, we can use some set theory. We can use decision trees. We can think of an IPO and all its possible outcomes. All the possible outcomes as one set, and then you divide those outcomes into either good outcomes or bad outcomes. And among the good outcomes, there's the best case scenario, the absolute best thing that could happen to an IPO. And in the bad outcomes, you have the absolutely worst case scenario. And in between there, you have an unknown average case scenario that it's kind of wafting between the two. So best case scenario and worst case scenario, you want to specifically define what those could be. And so for the best case scenario, that's something to reach towards, I would say. So kind of like a reach goal. And in terms of I would do my best, and I am doing my best, to reach towards the best case scenario. We can fly high. Whereas this is avoid. The worst case of war is to avoid. You don't want that to happen. So if you know what you're trying to avoid, it's easier to avoid. Can you imagine trying to dodge a bullet with your eyes closed? Or your eyes blindfolded? It's going to be a little bit harder. So dodging bullets with your eyes open is already hard. If you try with eyes closed or blindfolded, it's just harder. So the idea of once you properly define what are these best case and worst case scenarios, you're going to have a better idea on, okay, what do we need to do to get towards this, and what do we need to do to avoid this? And when you go back to dividing these best case, average, and worst case scenarios, I use this exact same technique to look at card games and see how good is a card really. what's the worst case scenario this card is, what's the average case scenario of this card, what's the best case scenario for this card, then you can ask yourself, okay, the top, everything above bad is a winning position. Even if you're winning by just a little bit, like 1%, you win. If you win the election by 0.1 votes, you still won. Like if we look at the Joe Biden, let's see, Joe Biden versus Trump election. If you just election fraud, not really accounting for what that is. Let's see, popular vote. How close was that? Never mind that. I thought it was going to be easier. Never mind that. But the winning positions are all acceptable. And in an investing world, being in a winning position is all you're looking for. If you are outperforming the market, good for you. But if you're just not losing, that's also good. And an IPO could be viewed that way. If we're not losing, we're winning. So now that we've clearly defined those things, we can look at what do we want and what do we don't want. And when the team is looking at it from this perspective, we ask ourselves in the green over here, well, we desire the winning positions. We want the best case scenario. And we don't want the worst case scenario. These are the undesirable outcomes. What are we doing before bad happens? What are we going to do when bad happens? And what are we going to do after bad happens? So risk mitigation is about what do we do before the bad stuff happens? Contingencies are about what is our plan when the bad stuff happens? And remedies are what are we going to do after the bad things happen? And if you thought this through, it can be easy to determine, should we move forward with the IPO? And what do we need to do? Should we partner with an insurance company or an investment bank? One way to think of the average case scenario is this is what's going to happen if we don't do anything special. If nothing weird happens. So we're going to just say nothing special happens. Nothing special happens means Elon Musk doesn't tweet about our company. Nothing special happens means the market doesn't suddenly crash or world war happens. Average case scenario is like citrus paribus, everything remaining equal, what's most likely, most probable to happen. And that's where when you look at the roadshow and you look at all the marketing efforts, everything on that, you're asking yourself, how can we improve our win chance? How can we increase the probability we'll succeed? Everything you do is special, quote unquote. So every added effort, you want to make sure those are things that are contributing to pushing our average case scenario, what happens if you don't do anything special, closer and closer towards the best case scenario. And even if it's not a complete success, the very act of trying will help educate us in terms of figuring out what does and does not work. And if something is contributing, we want to do more of that. If something's not contributing, we can ask ourselves why. Do we need to stop it, or is there just tweak it? That's an approach to look at it. So when we talk about underwriting, which pretty much the rest of the presentation is really going to dive deep into, it's all about talking about the bad outcomes, actually. Underwriting, the whole point of insurance is what do you do when bad happens, after bad happens. So this is why you ask yourself, if we want the good outcomes, is there a way that we can just cover the bad outcomes with insurance? And if we feel that we need to cover the bad outcomes with insurance, should we involve underwriters? And I think that decision weighs heavily on how strong is our brand presence, how well have investors engaged with our company in the past, and how bad and how probable are the bad outcomes, how bad and how terrible is the worst case scenario, and how likely is that to happen. And the more likely that is, we should cover with. The larger the probabilities are involved with the lower half, the more we would benefit from partnering with insurance and involving underwriters. So this is another way to look at an underwriter's IPO. Now, from here on out, we're just going to assume, let's say your IPO wants to involve underwriters. Well, you are the issuing company. We're selling the stock to the underwriters, and the underwriters are buying it from us, and they're selling that stock to the investors. So the investors give the money to the underwriters, and the underwriters give the money to us. And in this way, you can see the underwriters are just like the stock exchange, operating as a middleman. And how this really works is underwriters are basically saying, look, we'll partner with you, you're going to charge me, we'll charge you money, and if we can't sell your stock, we will buy the stock. That's how they insure the IPO. And so we're going to take that from another angle on the bottom text tagging portion. And I don't know how loud my music is. Okay. Another way of looking at it is IPOs, because they're such special, large-scale business transactions involving many buyers and many sellers, they can bring on board risk management specialists, underwriters, or insurers, investment banks. They all do the same thing. They're basically risk management specialists. You pay them money so that they will help you manage the risk. Now, the underwriters are really operating as insurance companies, and they sell you a contract to assume the risk/liability and the obligations of another party. So through an insurance policy. So underwriters sell people contracts to take up their risks. And underwriters are an option that you can pay to ensure or guarantee a business transaction's successful completion. Now, business transactions basically come into two main forms, a sale or a purchase. And sometimes there's uncertainty involving selling and buying, and so insurance companies can get involved to ensure the business transaction goes through. And the way underwriters are ensuring these business transactions is that they are selling these contractual promises, insurance policies, to personally take the responsibility to pay the dollars necessary to close said insured transaction up to the amount that's insured by the insurance policy. In the context of an IPO, underwriter involvement guarantees that an IPO's worst case scenario is clearly defined, controlled, and limited to the underwriter's insurance policy agreed upon and paid for. So when you look at this, basically you're like this without insurance. And then when you involve insurance for the underwriters, you're paying them up possibly to 7% of the IPO proceeds, and they are going to mitigate the risks involved in the bad outcomes. And the way they're guaranteeing that is they're saying, well, if they will take the responsibility to sell the shares, and if they cannot sell the shares, they will be the last line of defense and they will buy it. So they're showing they have the money to buy the entire companies. And that's why only a specific set of companies can even act as IPO insurers, because if the IPO is unable to sell, they are going to have to buy the entire company, which can amount to like tens or even hundreds of billions of dollars. So it's kind of a serious thing. If they're like, we'll sell all your shares, and if you can't sell it, we're going to buy your entire company from you for $100 billion. So you can imagine that can be a pretty serious transaction to insure. So again, in the context of an IPO, underwriter involvement guarantees that an IPO's worst case scenario is clearly defined. What's clearly defined? The underwriters will buy possibly all the shares, controlled by that fact that the underwriters will buy all the shares at a set price, and it's limited to the underwriter's insurance policy that they've agreed to the issuing company. So the issuing company is a customer of the underwriter. They're a partner with the underwriter. They're paying the underwriters to basically say, we're going to agree to this insurance policy so that when bad happens, what's going to happen? And so it's customizable. So in the most dramatic version, the most dramatic kind of insurance that could be sold to an IPOing company is that they will literally buy the entire company if they cannot sell the stock. Now, I had to like really think about this like in multiple different angles to really get this for myself. So that's why we're restating it many times so that we are not going to get tricked, cheated, or make a mistake. Another way of thinking about it is an IPO underwriter insurance policy may, keyword, may guarantee, it's customizable to every contract, that a specific number of shares, possibly all of them, will be sold at the initial price. That a specific number of shares will be sold at the initial price by making the insurer's obligation to purchase any surplus unsold shares over a set period of time. So there's it's very specific. Let's say it again. IPO underwriter insurance policy. All right, I'm gonna put an and. We can fly high. And then I'm gonna make it in small text because we need to practice reading the fine print. You know what I'm saying? Like the fine print. You want to know what you're buying, so you need to make sure that you're buying exactly and paying for exactly what you want to pay for. So an IPO underwriter insurance policy may guarantee that a specific number of shares will be sold at the initial price by making it the insurer's obligation to purchase any surplus unsold shares over a set period of time. On top of that, the price is actually set by the insurer. So it gets a little tricky. The underwriter, let's roll that through an example. I'm Chris, I'm the CEO of Paideon, and I want to work with Goldman Sachs. So I'm saying, hey, Goldman Sachs, would you like to insure my IPO? They're saying, okay, sure. You're going to pay me 7% of the proceeds of the IPO. And, Chris, we want to be able to set the price because figuring out what the price is very tricky, and we really want to know what's the price that will sell the most units at the highest quantity and make you a fortune. So they're gonna like sweet talk you, but really that's what Goldman Sachs is telling me. But what they're really thinking is like underwriters thinking to himself, Paideon's shares, I think they're worth $10. So I'm gonna set the price at $8. That way, if the worst case scenario for them happens where they can't sell the shares, they have to buy all the shares at $8 a share, they will be able to resell it on the secondary market at a profit of $2. So they're really trying to negotiate and actually price the company lower than what they think it is so that they can always win. So the underwriters are trying to win. Yes, they provide value by managing the risk, but we gotta be careful that whose side are they actually on? Goldman Sachs is on Goldman Sachs' side. They're not on my company's side. So we're going to go at it again. So underwriters are insurers. What do insurers do? They insure. How do they insure things? With insurance policy. And the fee paid to an underwriter can take many forms. It can be a commission. It can be a premium, a spread. I don't even know what a spread is. I don't need to learn that. Or just paid in interest. And the whole idea behind insuring is to insure means to arrange for compensation in the event of X in exchange for regular advance payments to a company. So life insurance is an insurance company will compensate me in the event I die over a period of time in exchange for regular advance payments to company. So you pay the insurance company like $1,000 a month, $1,000 a year, and based off your insurance policy, if you die in like 20 years, you will then be compensated for dying. So you want to insure yourself against death, because if you die and you're like a father, it's going to be ruinous for your family, right? It's going to be very expensive. So you may want to pay upfront for life insurance, and that way if you die, then your family will be taken care of financially. Now, the way that the insurance companies are making money is that they are actuaries. They are using probabilities and statistics, and they're figuring out how likely do people actually die. So they actually charge people. They're charging a bunch of people, and they're making a lot of money off a lot of people, and they only need to pay up in the case that event blank happens. In the case of an IPO, what's the event? Well, to insure an IPO is to arrange for compensation in the event that the company cannot sell its shares in exchange for advance payment to the insurer. So Goldman Sachs wants to be paid up front for me to work with them, then they'll insure my IPO. And if they did it right, they will make a lot of money. They'll make sure I make money, but they will also not trigger the insurance event. They don't really want to trigger the insurance event. They don't want the event to happen. So they're trying to use probability and statistics and figure out what's the probability that my shares cannot sell at blank price. Once they feel like they've got enough data and enough market feedback to make that determination, that's when they're going to go in and give you a price and make sure that they can come out on top no matter what happens. Really interesting. I want to get more into the math of that. So let's think of it another way. An insurance policy is a sellable or purchasable contractual agreement to give the risk, liability, and obligations of one party to another party. The insured person is giving their liabilities to the insurer, giving their risk to the insurer. Specifically, if event X happens. So if you bought life insurance, the risk of dying, you're actually giving that risk to the insurer. And so when that event actually happens, the insurer is actually making sure that that event is not as bad as it was. So if you had a car insurance and you have a car accident, the risk originally was just you and you alone. Like car insurance means if I crash my car, no, if I don't have car insurance and I crash my car, I have to pay for it, right? But if I've got car insurance and I like Geico car insurance and my car gets totaled, then the insurance company is going to get involved and it's going to trigger, and they're going to take care of they're going to take care of whatever the insurance policy has covered. So the insurance policy actually transfers specific legal liabilities from the insured policyholder, the policy buyer, to the insurer, the policy seller. So should event X occur, the underwriter becomes liable to pay the amount of dollars agreed upon and guaranteed/insured by the insurance policy. So insurance coverage refers to the quality and quantity of the risk/liability and obligations transferred to an insurer in an insurance policy. Not all insurance coverage is equal. So better insurance policies are going to be more extensive. Insurance coverage will be more expensive. So if you don't think something is likely to happen, you might settle for a cheaper insurance policy, which will give you less insurance coverage. So really, it's a risk mitigation strategy to figure out, okay, how concerned am I of this event happening? And if I think it's kind of likely, maybe I should pick up insurance coverage. So it's negotiable, it's customizable, and I'm talking about this a lot because the underwriters of an IPO are essentially offering insurance coverage, and there are actually many different ways that the underwriters can partner with you. There are many different levels of insurance coverage that can be guaranteed in an IPO. The most, buying all the shares, buying some of the shares, blah, 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 blah. It can get really specific to the number of shares, what happens, or how long. Because maybe someone wants the coverage of that company to be a long period, like 2 years, but maybe they want it over a short period, just 2 months, and that's completely fine. So figuring out what's the right bet would probably need extra research to see what's working for other companies. But this is an area to know where it can get really customizable. So coverage can be partial or it can be complete coverage. It is limited to the scope as defined by the insurance policy bought by the insured. So actually knowing what your insurance policies are covering could be very useful. So an insurance claim refers to the amount of dollars the insured and payable to the insured by the insurer should event X occur. That kind of sounds really terrible English, but what it means is when event X happens, because you have an insurance policy, it clearly defines how much the insurer needs to pay the insured. And so the insurance claim refers to both the amount insured and payable to the insured, because insured but not payable refers to the insurance policy. So if you buy an insurance policy, you are now insured for that amount in event X. But event X has not occurred, so it's not payable. But once event X occurs, you are payable. So getting into some story time a little bit about the origins. I can try to make my mic a little bit louder. So to underwrite is a verb. It means to insure, and it's actually referring to the act of signing and accepting liability under an insurance policy, thus guaranteeing to make payment in case of loss or damage. Basically event X. So at the underneath a document at the very bottom is a signature section. Please sign here. That is writing. The writing refers to the signature. Under refers to under an insurance policy or under bottom of the document. And a legal signature is a legally binding signature that makes a contract an official agreement once all parties have placed their signatures on a contract. Signatures indicate that you have read and agreed to the terms and conditions. I find legal stuff very interesting. So, the etymology of how the word comes from is writing a signature under the bottom to sign, seal, or legalize a contract. And the origins of it is merchant shipping captains used to buy insurance from underwriters just in case pirates, storms, sea monsters, etc. cause them to lose their cargo. So if you're in merchant shipping, there are a lot of hazards, and if you're the captain and you're personally liable for the entire ship, it can be a very stressful issue. Like if you have 50 ships and one ship goes missing, that's a fortune, right? So underwriters are people who would actually insure to protect, same way we described, insurance policies, just in case ships were lost. So the advent of disaster that would otherwise ruin the captain, adequate insurance coverage provided reliable protection. And this is really cool for me because I'm really into the age of sail, and I think that a lot of the concepts in business have their origins in a military science or a sailing context. Like the shares of a company, for example, is totally derived from a really kind of naval, it is even explainable in sort of naval terms. Probably go over it another time, but I find that the age of sail is pretty much when the IPO was founded. In 1600, the Dutch East Indies Company, VOC, VOC, was the first company to IPO, and they were a merchant shipping company. So is it really a surprise that underwriting, which probably existed before that, had strong use cases in a merchant shipping world? And so there was a time where merchant shipping was probably the cutting edge industry, and where most of the financial innovations are rooted, that like they come from the people who are most business-minded in the 1600s will definitely be involved in some kind of global enterprise. And the only way you can do global enterprise is through ships. And I'm always fascinated with the fact that people can maintain lines of communication, encrypt secret messages in such a no smartphone world. Just a non-electrical world is really interesting. And I would like to learn more about how people did business in the good old days, because it's mind-blowing that some people could even operate these global corporations and entities without advanced software. It's just so cool. And since I'm not really from that context, it's really something that's new to me. So the thing about IPOs is, think about this. Is there uncertainty in an IPO? Yes. You're not sure who will buy and how many shares at what price. So let me read what I wrote. IPOs are sophisticated business transactions, potentially involving a huge volume of buys and sells, and buyers and sellers. So there's really uncertainty about who will buy, how many shares will be bought, and at what price, right? And so wherever there's uncertainty, there's risk. Risk, and you made it in yellow because that's where the fence can happen. Bad things can happen, basically. That's what makes risk. So asking a girl out there's some uncertainty, there's some risk, there are some bad things that can happen. But the worst thing that can happen, but I don't want to talk about this one again, right? It's not a big deal. And so when you understand that as long as there's uncertainty, there's risk. Risk means there's bad things that can happen. This is where things get exciting for underwriters. Because wherever there's risk, underwriters can make a profit. It's a business opportunity. How? Because underwriters specialize in quantifying risk. They actually price risk. So underwriters, whenever they see uncertainty, they're like, okay, where there's risk, if I properly price it, I can start selling people these insurance policies to counteract that risk. Thereby, I can make a killing. So where there is risk, underwriters can create and sell insurance policies to counteract the risk. How awesome is that? It's like turning something that most people think is bad into something that's good. Like for us, we think, oh no, she might reject me, or oh no, she might think I'm stupid. But the people with the underwriter mindset are like, okay, there's risk, there's uncertainty, bad things can happen. Great, let's turn this into a insurance policy. Let's turn this into a business opportunity. And this way of thinking is amazing. It's such a good, sharp way of looking at problems as an opportunity. And I actually really felt excited to. I wrote these notes. I felt really excited to just dive into the world of the underwriter and just get a taste of it and thinking and be like, wow, this is amazing. This is not normal human behavior. This is like next level thinking on some level, right? I understand it's pretty normal to buy insurance, but think about the mentality it takes to be the first person to ever sell a person insurance policy. That's genius. And to make sure that you're making a profit while you're doing it, it's a little bit quantitative, and it's a little bit thinking long term, thinking far ahead into the future, really having a good grasp on reality. You have to really understand reality on some level to properly quantify and price risk. And once you understand that area of reality, because let's face it, not everyone can underwrite everything. Like underwriting has specialties. There are underwriters who specialize in life. There's underwriters who specialize in health insurance. People who specialize in fire insurance, earthquake insurance. There's all kinds. So people have a tendency to figure out what they're good at and specialize. But I think that the concept is that the underwriter's dream is that you want to be able to quantify everything, and price every risk, and then sell it to every person who has that risk. And all of a sudden, if you price it correctly, you've just found yourself thousands, millions, billions of customers. So this little graphic assumes that you've decided to work with an underwriter. So let's say I'm Chris Sweet. I have my company Paideon, and we're Paideon Incorporated, Paideon Technologies Incorporated. And we're not sure how many people will buy, who will buy, how many shares will they buy, and at what price they buy. So there's uncertainty. So bad things can happen. And so we're involving the underwriters who are like, let me quantify your risk, let me price your risk, I'll help you counterbalance that risk. So we're saying, we're looking for an underwriter. So let's say there's a two-sided match. You find an underwriter you like, underwriter likes you. Because in theory, underwriters who are smart should not be insuring everybody. That means a good underwriter needs to understand everyone's risk is not the same. A smoker's risk for dying may not be the same as a non-smoker, for example. A person who's gotten 10 car accidents risk will not be the same as someone who's never been in a car accident, right? So underwriters need to also that. They also need to reject people. They need, for the sake of their own business, they need to be able to say, and the best way for them to vet people is they basically scale their pricing based off of risk, and when they think that the risk is too great, they basically price them out. Just give them the pricing untenable, or basically say, sorry, we cannot insure people at this level, the risk is too high. We do not, our model does not even work. We can't even price you. That's pretty much how underwriters need to ultimately. For us, we're looking for underwriters who have the capital to be able to insure the IPO. We're also looking for people who are giving us the best price. We'd probably be looking around, shopping around at this stage, talking to different underwriters, talking to Goldman Sachs, talking to Morgan Stanley, talking to JP Morgan, talking to different investment banks, whatever, and then figure out would enter into preliminary negotiations and figure out, okay, so what do you have to offer us? We're interested in buying your policy, and then we're going to shop around. I would recommend shopping around, getting 5 different contracts, and then asking yourself which one do you think is the best fit. Because until you have signed it, you're not obligated. You need to shop around. It's just like for a home renovation, you might want to ask multiple people to do home renovation to price you and give you a quote, give you different sizes. You're choosing from a pool of candidates that you think are good, and you choose the best one. That's how you should select an underwriter. So once you've selected the underwriter, you're paying them straight up. You have to pay them. If they start working with you, the paying process. And now they want to be in charge of everything that goes forward, which is a relief for some people and is also really sweeping for some people, because there is reason to believe that the steps between underwriter selection and above can be completely done independently. The whole point that direct listing IPOs exist means that you don't need to do it. Underwriters IPOs only if you want your hands held. If you want to make sure that the worst case scenario is protected. And so they want to control filing processes. They want to set the terms and conditions. They want to value the company. They want to value the price. They want the underwriters at this stage. They want to determine everything you would otherwise do by yourself. They want to determine what's the selling price. They want to determine how many shares will be sold. And they're actually pushing aggressively. And they're saying we're the risk experts, leave it to us. They're really going to be very forceful pushing in this case. Step aside. Now the scheduled marketing roadshow might sound glamorous, but the reality is these companies work with a lot of other companies, and for that reason, do not carry high priority. You might be high priority during the time you're paying them, but at the end of the day, when these underwriters are taking control of your marketing roadshow, they are scheduling meetings with institutional investors. They're promoting the brand. They're trying to control the narrative and how the company is packaged and presented to the world. And they're not going to do it necessarily in the way that you want it to. And they're not going to do it when you want it to or where you want it. They're going to do it where they think is the best, when they think is the best. And because you've hired them as the experts, you have to defer to them contractually. Which is a little bit like surrendering your rights. You paid to surrender your rights so that other people can do your marketing for you. Makes sense if you have no idea what you're doing, but it might not make any sense if you kind of know what you're doing, or you feel like, look, we can do it less aggressively. Because this IPO period is between 4 to 6 months. And this marketing roadshow, to me, I think the marketing roadshow is not that effective. From where I'm sitting, I might be wrong. It does not seem to be the most effective thing. It's just sort of effective. Like, I don't even know how you measure the effectiveness, but it may not be as necessary or as useful as you think. But the idea is, for a few weeks, they're going to aggressively have you and the company show up in different cities. They're going to have you go to Shanghai, wherever you're going, like Chicago, New York City, San Francisco, do investor presentations, inviting institutional investors, getting them excited, and trying to get them to invest into your company. So in those presentations, not only would the managers and the executives of the IPO company get involved, but also the underwriters would say, we love this company, we trust it, we've got its back, this is going to work. So there is a reason to believe that underwriter involvement does excite investor interest, because you know that the investors know, like Sand Hill Road would know that, okay, that at the worst case scenario, someone's going to buy the shares. So it makes sure that there's a buyer for the shares, so other buyers can be a little bit more confident that they buy it, they're not alone, and that if they feel like selling it, they know that they can get a minimum price back. This is the real reason that institutional investors definitely like insured IPOs, because the underwriters they're not charging the institutional investors, they're charging the issuing company. So when institutional investors are looking at IPOs, if there's an underwriter, it's not costing them more money. Sure, they might pay the underwriter, but the idea is they would pay the exact same price potentially if there was no underwriter involved. So it's not a discount it doesn't cost institutional investors anything, it costs the companies money. And so the institutional investors may look at the IPOs as a good service that is giving them an extra layer of protection, knowing that the legitimacy of the company has gone through more vetting. And so after the roadshow, the main goal of the roadshow is to get people excited and interested in the IPO, and then finally come to set a final price, an IPO price. And the underwriter's price, again, is the price that they are going to feel comfortable insuring the quantity. So you tell them at the beginning stage what the quantity you want them to insure. At the end, they're telling you what price they're going to insure that, which is kind of a weird ambush trick, because you technically paid them and hired them all the way from year to year, and now they're going to price their IPO. And people do not necessarily get happy. For example, Google fired one of the investment banks one of its underwriters, I think, because the negotiations were getting a little bit hostile. Because you hire them to help you market and help you get to this point, and then they sell you a price, and of course you're probably going to think to yourself accurately that the price that they just insured you at is not high enough. You think, well, you're actually lowballing me, and they are lowballing you. They're definitely insuring the price at something less than what they really think it's worth. And so this can cause issues, and it's never too late to fire and terminate. So during the initial contract signed by the CEO and issuing company, the underwriter, they may want to have some termination clauses just in case you want to terminate the relationship, and so that if you want to fire them midway through and switch to another underwriter or something like that, that's completely valid, because I think the IPO price is a point of tension that's very easy for me to see even from where I'm sitting. And interesting, this street research I think has to do with stabilization, because this is talking about after you price it for 25 days. I think street research refers to once they found out the valuation of the price of the stock, they want to go on Wall Street, just basically what's word on the street, what's going on in the financial world, how do people feel about the price. And it's a feedback loop, I guess, that if the market is not responding well to price, to adjust the price to something that's more appropriate. So, underwriting an IPO. So underwriters can insure any type of legal business transaction. Home buying, they can insure that. And so underwriters, of course, can insure IPOs, because IPOs are a type of legal business transaction. And an example of that is underwriters to ensure the minimum number of shares that will be sold at the opening price. For a price! They charge you to ensure the minimum number of shares that will be sold at the opening price set by them. And another way of looking, wow! Underwriters pledge to buy all the surplus unsold shares after a period of time. So they might even, it's a time window, there's an actual time window that may not be very long. So the time window can be like, time window could be, for example, like 180 days. It can be less than that, but it can be that they ensure the IPO is a stabilized, it's a kind of stabilization. So the underwriter pledges, we will buy all the surplus unsold shares at the opening price after over a time window of 180 days. If nothing is bought, they will buy it. And so there you go. You got your minimum price guaranteed. Minimum price guaranteed. So in other words, IPO underwriters take responsibility for pricing your stock and selling X numbers of shares, a limited number of shares, however you define it, it could be all of stock, at a specific price. That's the IPO. And so I do think the results of this is that underwriting does contribute significantly to investor confidence because it guarantees a layer of high-quality due diligence. These insurers take on significant risk to insure an IPO. The more expensive, the larger this company, the more expensive it is to acquire this company, the more risk they're taking on some level, because you're insuring a $5 million company IPO, and insuring that is not the same as insuring $50 or $500 billion company. Now you need $500 billion to potentially acquire at the minimum price. And the insurer has to price the stock well, or they're going to lose big. So that's why they're always going to be conservative, and they're always going to price it less than what they think it's worth, because they can't play with this. They can't price it at the price the market they think the market will buy, because if the market's not eating at the price that they set, then they're going to have to buy it at that price, and they're not going to be turning a profit, in which case they're just wasting their time. So they need to price the stock below their valuation to guarantee they do not lose big. Again, we're talking about risk mitigation experts. They're not going to take on risk that they feel they don't need to. So a second thing is there's a level of minimum performance for the IPO. So since the minimum price is set, if the IPO underperforms, doesn't sell all the shares, the underwriter's insurance policy kicks in. And so that guarantees that the IPO will perform at a guaranteed level. And so the CEO, the shareholders, and actually institutional investors and private investors who jumped in can kind of sleep a little bit. Another way of looking at it, and I need to check this one is my interpretation again. I'm not too sure if it's 100% correct, but I interpret this as there's a refund time window. Because it depends, you have to look at what the underwriter guarantees. Because the underwriter has guaranteed to buy back the shares at a specific price over a time window, after a time window. So they will have to buy back shares that are unsold. Or it may be shares that have been sold. I'm not exactly sure because I think it's customizable. But the idea is the underwriters are guaranteed to buy the shares at a specific price. So if you jumped in as an investor and bought at a price, that same price, you know that you can technically sell it back at that same price, and you'll have potentially a buyer. Now that may not be true, because I think there are situations where that's true and that's not true. The situation where it's not true is when I bought it for $50 per share, the underwriter guaranteed it at $50 per share. And let's just say that there are 100 shares unsold. So the underwriter may have to just buy back those ones that were not sold. They may not be guaranteed to buy back it from you. So they may have to just buy it from the company. And so you're out of luck. You have to deal with your own $50 to find another buyer. But I think indirectly, because the underwriter has to buy it back at $50, you know that there's going to be some demand, some supply and some demand at that price. Some supply and demand at that price. So there's going to be some trading at that price. So it's not that it's not always true, but it is sometimes true. And that kind of trading volume around that price it's a guarantee for the people who bought it at that price. It's kind of an incentive to buy at the same price the underwriter priced it at, because that's the price they have to buy it back. So I think there's a real, it's only a refund time window for the people who bought it at the IPO opening price, who kind of put in the pre-orders, because once they bought it at that period, they could also sell it back. But you'd have to look specifically at the underwriter agreement, and I don't even know if that's public information. Is that public information? We would need to ask you that. And so just to boom it up a little bit, this example is an equity syndicate that was on Bumble's IPO in 2021, February 11th, right before Chinese New Year. So, in the case of Bumble Corporation, on the left-hand side is what we call an equity syndicate. So an equity syndicate is when you have more than one underwriter. So in this case, Goldman Sachs chose to be the lead underwriter, or was hired as the lead underwriter, and they involved other companies to also join the contract underwriting. The reason why is this is an $8 billion company. So Goldman Sachs could take on all the risk, or they can distribute the risk. And in this case, they chose to distribute the risk. So this is it's about distributing risk. So an equity syndicate equals lead underwriter plus other underwriters distribute risk. So there's quite a few companies. People actually count Get that rap going. It's 9:33. I'm gonna have to eat a snack soon. But I love my boo Lulu, so God bless her. So an equity syndicate it has a lead underwriter, which is clearly Goldman Sachs, other underwriters, and the whole goal is to distribute risk of ensuring an IPO. Now, an equity syndicate probably can insure other things other than IPOs, but this was the first time I've ever run into this concept, was in underwriting IPO. So we say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. That's 23. So my guess, I could be wrong, my guess is that there are, as I said, Goldman Sachs may not be, Blackstone might actually be the lead underwriter. I'm just assuming that it was alphabetical There's 23 underwriters. And what did they underwrite? They guaranteed to purchase 45 million shares. Because the IPO, if I'm not mistaken, Bumble has 160 million outstanding shares, that is total. And the IPO involved 45 million shares. And we can check that now. Shares outstanding. So shares outstanding 1.15 million. That's a lot more shares. Then why do they need to? Why would they need to? 45. Oh, so they adjusted it. Excuse me. They offered 50 million shares, but so they offered 50 million shares to be sold, but the underwriters at this stage in the S1 filing were insuring 45 million shares. So the actual number of shares was still subject to change at this period of time. So let's take a graphical look. The graphical look. So when we take a graphical look of the IPO and involving underwriters, you get an idea that you have a seller, the issuing company, the insurance company is the underwriter. The first, you can actually say, okay, let me put it this way. You could even call this the primary market, and the secondary market. It's a little bit of an oversimplification, but I think it's an important concept later down the road in understanding what IPOs kind of, how can they be used strategically, is that the IPOing company is selling, they basically gave the right to sell the shares to underwriters. The underwriters price the shares and then they sell it to institutional investors. That's the primary market. And the institutional investors now have it on the open markets, and they're selling it to other institutional investors and other private investors, including myself, you. And so the secondary market, it means you're buying from people who bought it from the people who were originally selling it. So the original primary market is the IPO company, the issuing company, and their underwriters who are collectively selling it to somebody, usually institutional investors. And then institutional investors reselling it is now the secondary market, that now the trading is beginning on NASDAQ and New York Stock Exchange. And so in this flow, the IPOing company is giving the underwriters the money, the shares, and the underwriters are actually paying them and taking away their commission fee. They're taking away their commission fee, they're taking away their fees. So the company is making some money. Now the underwriters are selling the shares to the institutional investors, and the institutional investors are giving the underwriter the money to buy it. Institutional investors are selling the shares to the open market, and the open market's purchasing it from the institutional investors. So you can imagine the underwriters want to sell it at a higher price, and the institutional investors want to sell it at a higher price. The underwriters want to buy it from the IPOing price. You can view them as buying it from the IPO price at a low. Underwriters want to buy it from the IPOing company at a low price, sell it at a higher price to institutional investors. The institutional investors want to buy it at a low price from underwriters and then sell it at a higher price to open market. Open market's buying it from the institutional investors and they want to sell it at a higher price to other institutional investors, to other people in the open market. So the open market actually has a loop in itself where it's trading on itself. So let's read what they wrote. The IPO company gives designated shares to underwriters, gives them the shares. The underwriter sells the shares to institutional investors. Okay. The institutional investors are free to retain the stock, so we'll go long term, or they can sell it now on the secondary market. Okay. So you can basically view this as the primary market. And this the secondary market. So money, the reason why it's called a primary market is because the proceeds of these sales go to the actual issuing company to some capacity. The secondary market, once it's sold on the secondary market, none of the profits benefit the primary. So primary market means that when a sale is made, some share of the profits go back to the issuing company. But on the secondary market, any profit made, none of the profit goes to the IPO company. So this is important to realize that even though a stock market price can spike like crazy high, it doesn't mean the company has more money to work with if that spike is happening in the secondary market. If the spike is happening in the primary market, it means that the IPOing company will now have more capital to work with and will have a higher chance to succeed, has more resources to push forward its vision. But when you're looking at it this way, most of the profit is being generated in the secondary market, and because it's generated in the secondary, I'm going to overlap it because there's kind of like overlap between the institutional investors. The reason why you're having so many middlemen is that everyone thinks they can make money off of someone else, and so the institutional investors think that they can buy it early from the primary market and then sell it at a higher price at the secondary market. The underwriters, on the other hand, are actually they're making money for sure on this transaction. So investors can buy shares on the open market once trading begins. So the thing is, even before the IPO bell is rung, institutional investors can place pre-orders and they can actually buy it from the underwriters even before the trading day begins. So technically, the underwriters can know that they have sold things before they've even sold anything when the IPO day has happened. So the institutional investors are technically getting the best price if they came on early, and assuming the price is a drop. Now the investors once the IPOing trading becomes live, that's the secondary market is becoming live. You're now listed on the markets. The institutional investors then pay the underwriter for the shares they receive. So they actually just straight up buy it from the underwriter, whereas the underwriter kind of borrowed the shares from the IPOing company, sold it to institutional investors, and now the underwriters disperse the proceeds of the offering to the company. Disperse. I need to check why would they use that word. Disperse. Disperse payout. So the underwriters actually pay out the IPOing company, and they take this. Look, let's take that red circle, the super red circle. This is why the underwriters want to get involved in the game. That 5 to 7% commission is fat. So I would actually say primary market proceeds, profit on the primary market benefits issuing company directly, but on the secondary market, profits do not benefit the issuing company directly. They can still benefit them indirectly, but it's not like if let's roll through an example. Let's use $1, $2, and $3. I'm the IPOing company. I let the underwriters borrow my shares. The underwriters sell it to the institutional investors for $1. The institutional investors then sell it to the open market for $2. The open market sells back itself in $3. So there's an actual legit feedback loop, and I'm gonna actually make one like. If you look at this masterful copy and pasting, masterful. There's actually the secondary market is selling to himself. Of course. This is what you would actually call the stock market, the trading. Trading on the stock market really falls under this loopity-loop we just created. Let's pretend people can read sideways. And so, let's think about this. I'm Paideon. I let Goldman Sachs take my shares. Goldman Sachs sells it to other institutional investors like Blackstone, like JP Morgan, $2 for $1. The institutional investors the underwriters then charge me 7%. They give me all the profit. They give me 93% of the proceeds, and they take their commission. The institutional investors happy for getting in before the IPO occurred, and they're actually able to resell it on the IPO date they're actually able to sell it once the IPO begins. So you could even think of, let me even make this. The IPO really begins somewhere here, like somewhere in the middle of here and here, somewhere between institutional buyers. I would actually say the IPO actually begins with the open market, but the pre-ordering clearly happened somewhere right here. So there's like a pre-ordering. Now it's getting crazy. Now it's just crazy notes, but that's fine. It's fine. As long as we understand. And so the IPOing company is happy because they've sold it at their minimum price or higher. The underwriter's happy because they charge you a commission. The institutional investor's happy because they sold it at 100% profit to the open market. The open market's happy because they bought and they're now trading among themselves, and they think either they can make money in the long term, holding long, or they can trade at a smaller scale. So technically all four parties can be happy. The real question isn't can all four parties be happy. The real question is how do you make sure in this to value create, how can you make sure you not only create value, but you also capture value? So value creation is occurring, value capture is occurring, but we've got to be mindful that it's okay to involve middlemen and okay to like share, so to speak, the victory. But the reality is, if you're the IPOing company creating a lot of value, you also, if you did it right, also want to capture as much value as possible. If people are benefiting down the pipeline on the right-hand side, that means you created the value and someone else is capturing that value. So you don't need to get angry. You just need to figure out how can we price things properly and how can we capture more value, because everyone in this game is trying to capture value for themselves. And I don't know if we have the strength to continue onward like a boss, but we can always have another hangout section. I just want to say note to self, my future self, just people in general. The goal of the photo on the left is to make you stronger, to not be distracted, to be body positive, to to not run away from things you like, to not be ashamed of things that you like. Because hey, what if you're an IPOing company? Investors come in all shapes and sizes. Some are really small, and some are really big. And being inclusive of other people, and just being ready to create value and capture value, that's kind of what's important. That's like the real goal, I think, of a CEO who's IPOing a company. Can we create value? Can we capture that value? And I think there's something interesting about this journey of shareholders, because again, your shareholders can be anybody. If you actually did your job right, why can't she spend her hard-earned money and buy some of your stock on the open market? Shareholders come in all shapes and sizes, and you really don't know who they are. So just being ready to just think of humans in the abstract and just say, look, I don't want to cheat people. I want my company to be valuable. I want my company to benefit my customers, and I actually want all our stock offerings, whether they're the IPO or whether they're private investment rounds, I want them to be a success. I want them to benefit the people involved. I want people to be walking away with smiles. I don't want people to be feeling like they got cheated, feeling like they've been manipulated, feeling like they've been kind of strung, like kind of had their legs pulled. You know, I view human beings as important. I try to view human beings the way Jesus views human beings. Like, human beings are my family members. Human beings are gifted. Human beings are worth dying for. They should be treated with a level of respect. The Bible says, and I'm going to take a Bible verse, an honest scale delights the Lord. All right, here we go. Proverbs 11:1. All right, let's put it there. Proverbs 11:1, I think. It must be 11:1, because Proverbs 1:1 does not sound like that. Dishonest scales are an abomination to the Lord, but an accurate weight is his delight. I mean, that's talking about business. That's talking about balance sheets. That's talking about treating people right. Everyone has their own beliefs. Some people don't believe in anything, or they believe in everything, or they believe in things that are contradictory. Maybe I'm guilty of some of those things. But I think one of the options that Jesus left for those people who wanted to follow him is that the people who follow Jesus are not afraid of people. Because if you love people, if you're busy loving people, you won't be afraid of them. I think there's something there. Not everyone, obviously not everyone believes in God, and not everyone loves Jesus. There are people who believe in Jesus and hate him. There are people who believe in God, but they don't find this verse to be particularly of interest to them. Because being dishonest has its advantages. So, to know there's God is one thing, but to love God is a completely different thing. And dishonest scales are an abomination to the Lord. You know, I've used dishonest scales before. You know, when I was a wee lad playing Guild Wars, playing games, I used to think scamming people was fun. I used to think scamming people was a sign that you were smart. So when I played, I was one of the richest people in Guild Wars. Okay? Take it or leave it. I had so much money in Guild Wars that my account could no longer hold the money. I had to have my friends hold my money in their accounts. But I was using dishonest scales. I was actively cheating. I would say that half of that fortune was got by cheating people, lying to people. I mean, I would literally tell people, if you like, I would take a holiday Christmas item, and I would say, hey, look at this. Look at I'm going to pull it up. Guild Wars Christmas items. Okay. I would take these Guild Wars Winter's Days Christmas items, and people had no idea what these items did. And I would sell them to people. Like, okay, look at this. Like, for example, you get like a Winter's Day gift. Like, a Winter's Day gift says, double click to open. You don't even know what is inside it, okay? But look at, okay, now we've got Google. It tells you the probability of getting all these crappy items, getting all these bad items, okay? Get all these bad items. So what I would do, I mean, I don't even know how I got away with this stuff, but I would like literally offer people these like little gifts, and I'd tell them, this can get you, and then I'd show them like super rare items, like, oh, let's just for good old time's sake, a Chaos Axe. Like, this is amazing. Like, I don't know, or Chaos Axe, or Fisher of Woe armor. I actually, dude, this game was amazing, and I was such a bad person in this game. Oh, come on, Fisher of Woe armor, come on. I actually really wish to play this game again one day. I don't know if I can't even access my account anymore. I don't even know what the password is. But like this was called Fisher of Woe armor. Everyone who wore this armor was straight up a baller. Like, this is the most expensive armor in the game. It costs like so much money. I think the majority of people who bought this stuff had to spend real life money. This is not armor that one does not simply wear the Fisher of Woe obsidian armor. But I would be like telling people stuff like, if you bought this Winter's Day gift, you'd have a chance to get like this super great Chaos Axe, and then you get this. Then and I knew it was lying, and I got away with it. And so I tell you now, look, I'm ashamed. I'm guilty of using dishonest scales, so I need forgiveness. And I'm a sinner. And moving forward, now that I'm older, and I want to be a great business executive, I want to be a great businessman, I want to be a great trader, a great boss, a great leader. I want to do things right. I want to do things, I want to buy and I want to sell in a way that when I die, I can face God and not be afraid. I want to be able to face God, and I want to hear God say, "You good and faithful servant." I want to know that I lived well and that I'm welcome in paradise. Like, I believe paradise, heaven's a real place. If this place is real, if God can make the earth, oh, he can make so much more. And so the Bible tells us to not set our minds simply on earthly things, but to set them on heavenly things. And that we are called to really transform the world around us, to be the kingdom of heaven, to actually bring heaven on earth, to love our neighbor as ourselves. And I think that the IPO and business are actually opportunities to show love for our neighbors. They're opportunities to show love to our shareholders, opportunities to show love to our investors and our underwriters. And it's an interesting paradoxical strategy, because we'll see. Like, in my life, I'm excited to find out how this goes. Is how do you love your neighbor and make a profit out of them? Like, how do you do that? Like, how do you balance that? How do you out-negotiate people without being dishonest? Is it dishonest to out-negotiate people? On some level, I don't think so. I think negotiations and being a skillful negotiator should have its rewards. I think strategic thinking should be awarded. And it's interesting because marketing has a deceptive component sometimes. Sometimes not telling people stuff is the same thing as lying sometimes, right? And marketing has a lot to do about crafting your image, crafting your narrative, really massaging the data, getting it to look right. And I pray because ever since I've decided, hey, I want to follow God, I've actually experienced firsthand I'm not very good at following God. I'm not able to live up to my ideals. And I think this is a good time for me to pray about that. God, I'm not able to see exactly the path forward. And mankind, myself included, are habitual liars. We think of deception as a very powerful tool in our toolkit. And we think lying to other people is indicative of how intelligent we are. We can scam each other and think, wow, I just got a great deal. And sometimes we can other people and say, look, these people are a different race, different species, different ethnic group, different socioeconomic status. So if I do this, I can benefit my own family, so it's fine. God, help us to have a better sense of justice, but help us to be businessmen and women par excellence. Help us to be above par. Help us to be productive. Help us to use and create new technologies. Help us to believe, because sometimes it's hard to believe. It's very easy to just say, well, this is the way it's done, and we should try to everyone cheats everyone, everyone deceives everyone, everyone manipulates people. It's all part of the game, it's all part of the thing. But you said that dishonest scales are an abomination to you. You say that honest weights, fair weights are a delight to you. So help us to be a delight to you, God, because honestly, I don't need much to be happy. I don't need more. And I decided a few months ago that my net worth now, that's enough. When I'm a billionaire, that's enough. When I have 50 billion, that's enough. When I have $0, that's enough. If it's possible to literally become a billionaire and have the government completely take it all away from you, and then go back again, and then take it all away from you again. And at the end of the day, God, I don't really want to look at people and value them because of their net worth. I don't want to value myself because of my net worth. I don't want to judge people. I want to actually help people. I want to help people that are younger than me, that are older than me. I want to be a better light bearer, a better Christ bearer. Christopher means Christ bearer. I'm not a very good Christ bearer, and I want to be a better Christ bearer. I can see that this world needs game changers. It needs difference makers. It needs champions who are not afraid to transform the world and challenge the powers that be to really breathe life in a world that's hurting. There's so many people that are lost and dying and just so confused. Myself, one of them, one of the lost and confused people. I pray that you help us really take pleasure in what we have, to be thankful for what you've given us, to be excited for what you have planned in store for us, to be sharing, because at the end of the day, if we don't want to share with people, what does that tell us about ourselves? And if we're not, help me use money well. Help me make superior investment decisions. Help me to make choices that will really benefit the society and the people. Not benefit people in name, not benefit people in theory, but to benefit people in reality. I want to be one of the people, part of the revolution of entrepreneurs who are making awesome new technologies, new services and goods, new insurance policies, new products, new brands available for purchase. Just more spice in our life. I pray that you, for those of us who are not fully understanding of entrepreneurship, help us understand its potential for good, and help us to use the capture that be masters of value creation and value capture. And I pray all these things in the Lord Jesus Christ's name. I pray. Amen. Don't be intimidated by anything you see on this page, whether it's a long text. Again, I'm talking to my future self. I'm talking to my future generations. I'm talking to my friends. I'm talking to strangers. I'm talking to everybody. Don't be intimidated by IPOs. Don't be intimidated by contracts. Don't be intimidated by women with very large breasts. Don't be intimidated by girls. Don't be intimidated by guys. Don't be intimidated by people talking badly about you. Don't be intimidated for being judged. Don't be intimidated by so much text or studying. View the world through a lens of love. Be excited that we have a chance to be human. Be excited that we have a chance to do something amazing. And honestly, I'm really hyped to just meet and partner with people. I don't have a lot of friends. I haven't met a lot of people. If we just pretend, I have met like people in the thousands, or even less than 5,000. There's 7 billion people on this planet. Even if 50% of the people were straight assholes, that means 50% of them are not. Pretend 50% of the people in the world, 3.5 billion, were completely your enemies, who thought you were annoying, they didn't like your voice, they didn't like your nose, they didn't like your skin color, they just didn't like you. And they're just impossible to get along with. Well, there's still that other 50%. That other 50%. And if that other 50% doesn't appreciate you, if that other 50% doesn't like your product, doesn't want to buy stuff from you, think about that other 50%. There's a whole world waiting out there. That whole world of people, they're different than what you think they are. They're not going to be able to fit in the boxes we have in our heads. The boxes in our heads are inaccurate. Something I realized this morning was I think that it's easier to move forward in life, to make aggressive life changes, to make moves, even to talk to someone new, or to be brave and stand up. I think it's possible and easier if we just recognize we are wrong a lot of the time. Like, for example, if I wake up and I think to myself, okay, I see a person I'd like to talk to, and I think to myself, oh, if I talk to them, they're probably busy. Well, if we just think back and remember, more than 50% of the time we're wrong. So you could be, let's say I'm 80% wrong. I'm 80% wrong, like 80% of the time I'm just wrong about things. I'm either inaccurately assessing things, or I'm coming up with incomplete conclusions. Maybe that conclusion we just had about that person, like, oh, that person doesn't want to talk to me, is wrong. Maybe we might think, well, I'd love to give a presentation, but I might just completely fail and embarrass myself. Well, there's an 80% chance you're wrong. There's an 80% chance you will not embarrass yourself. There's an 80% chance that your self-talk is self-deception. So we can actually, I think, and I want to practice more. I'm not a master yet, but it just dawned on me that by accepting we're wrong more than we are right, we can ignore the voices in our heads that are telling us you can't do this, or this is not going to work out, or why even try? Because 80% of the time I can verify I'm just not right. I'm not right about people. I've trusted people who are not trustworthy, and I haven't treated people right who are worth treating right. There's just so many instances where I was completely wrong. And we shouldn't be ashamed of that. I think Jeff Bezos put it really neatly in his Amazon Incorporated has a document that says how good leaders can be right most of the time. And if I remember the 3 points correctly, the first point is talk to really smart people. Point number 2, talk to, also means listen to people who are really smart. So talk to and listen to people who are smarter than you. And man, there are so many people who are smarter than us in at least one area. So if you just listen to them in those areas, you're going to benefit. The second thing is listen a lot. Listen a lot. That means take in information. Listen doesn't just mean with your ears, it means with your eyes. It means listen to the data. It means listen to the science, listen to the trends, listen to the people. Listen to the voice of truth. And the third thing is change your mind a lot. I love this because there are some people who think that when they're wrong, it just reflects badly on them. They don't want to be wrong. They're afraid of being wrong. But the best scientists and best philosophers and best everything, they are what makes them so good, I think, is they identify quickly where they're wrong and they quickly right it. They make it right. And then they're always thinking, how can I even be more right? So for example, you might think if I was a UFC fighter, I might think that this training methodology is the best. But if I'm a good UFC fighter, I'm missing point 3. Actually, reframe it. 1, listen a lot is number 1. 2, change your mind a lot. 3, seek to disconfirm your deepest held beliefs. This means that as a UFC fighter, you're actually listening to your coaches, you're listening to the analysts, you're listening to other people, but at the same time you're listening to yourself and you're listening to the facts. Then you actually already precondition your mind that we're going to change our mind a lot. So change what we think a lot. So we might think this is the best way possible, but we're open to change. Then step 3, actively seek to disconfirm your deepest held beliefs. We have a lot of beliefs. I have beliefs about God. I've got beliefs about the moon. I've got beliefs about how the world works. I've got beliefs about myself, my family, about psychology, about games. The UFC fighter has beliefs that this is the best training methodology, but seeking to confirm your own beliefs means challenge that. You proactively challenge that. And you say, is this really the best training methodology? Is this really what an IPO is? Is this really who God is? Was God really manifest in the person named Jesus? We should be asking and challenging ourselves that and not be afraid of truth. So we should, it's hard for the religious person, but we should, for example, really value what is true over what we want to be true. We may wish that this is true, but if it's not true, then I want to know. And if we have that mindset, listen a lot, change your mind a lot, and seek to disconfirm your deepest held beliefs. If you keep having that loop, your mind is being transformed and renewed, and you're able to, I think, improve and find a better way of doing things, a deeper way of doing things, and you actually lose a lot of the stress that is related to not getting it right the first time, because this methodology basically says we don't care if we get it right the first time. If we don't get it right the first time, we're going to use that as a data point, and we're going to readjust our strategy, and we're going to push forward and figure out how to get it right the next time. And if we don't get it right the next time, we're going to use that as a data point, and we're going to try again. And once you build this kind of habitual thinking, it's just like IPOs. I have not IPO'd a company yet, but why can't I? If I try and I fail, then why not try again? Try again, update our beliefs, try again, fail, try again. But by the time we're on the 5th try, we've already got a deeper understanding of what works and what doesn't work, or more accurately, what doesn't work, so we can explore and happily try. I mean, what's the worst case scenario? If you fail trying to IPO a company 1 to 5 times, does that mean you're stupid? Does that mean you're dumb? Does that mean you're not worthy? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. My worth is not coming from success or failure. My worth is, I'm already worth a lot because I'm a child of God. I'm a valuable human being. I'm an explorer. I'm a thinker. I respect other people, but I don't need other people to respect me. And this is another thing I learned from Jesus, is that Jesus represents so many new ways of thinking that I highly recommend people who are tired of their old ways of thinking should actually think about trying. Like, Jesus to me represents, if the whole world does not respect me, that's not going to change me from respecting the whole world. If the whole world looks down on me and makes fun of me, and hates me even, it's not going to quench my love. I'm not going to let hatred turn me into a hater. No. I'm going to focus on God. I'm going to focus on what is true, what is lovely, what is noble. There's something powerful about that. Like, that just seems so much better. Like, it seems significantly better than whatever strategy I was on before that. When we think about, I do not need other people to respect me. Absolutely not. I don't demand other people's respect. I don't even care if I get their respect. If they respect me, that's cool. But at the end of the day, Even if they respected me, I tell you now, they're only respecting me for a part of me. Really, most people, when they respect us, they're only respecting you for your image or your ability in one specific area. And if they had a deeper picture, if they knew a little bit more about you, that respect's gone. It's like, so the respect is kind of shallow. It's kind of fake. It's based off of an illusion of who we are. And so this is why I don't think worrying too much about that respect matters on a deeper level. It might matter from a marketing perspective. You want to be marketable, you want to have that respect, sure. But from a deep spiritual level, it doesn't really matter. And this is also where the love of God, I think, can be felt, is because whereas the respect other people in the world have for us is very, very fragile, very shallow, very specific to a certain version of ourselves that shows up at one given time. The love of God is true and loves every part of us at every moment for who we are. Now, it is my wish that everyone would experience that. And surely I've experienced that before. I do not always experience it, but it's experienceable. And I think that if we experience that and we are able to hang on to that, and if we are able to feel that, the love of God, that we are loved for who we are, regardless of what we've done and regardless of what we will do, I think that's a powerful love that can be accepted. I devised an experiment actually about this, and I realized that the feeling of being loved is a very unique feeling. You cannot fake it. Like, if I was to look at this picture of this girl on the left, and let's pretend she's my crush, I really like her. Let's pretend she's your crush. Let's pretend you think of whoever is your crush, a girl that you really like, or a guy that you really like, or a celebrity or an influencer. Take that picture and sit there and use all your brain power and will that person to love you. Pretend that person loves you. Try to feel that person's love. It's impossible. Like, you can't look at someone and imagine they love you. Love, the feeling of being loved, is not something that can be fabricated or faked. And this is actually one of the proofs of God's existence at an individual level to certain people, is that people like me, we've felt the opposite of love our entire life. We felt ostracized. We felt all kinds of negative things. We know what it's like to be hated. In fact, one time I reveled in it, and one time I thought that was a good thing. Like, they fear me. Like, from a gamer perspective, a lot of people want to be feared and loathed. They don't really care about being loved by people. They want to cause people pain. Like, in the game, you're trying to beat the other people up so badly that every time they see your name, they want to run away. That's like how Heroes of New Earth works. But God, His love can be felt. You can't imagine, you cannot fake someone loving you. I cannot pretend Aragorn from Lord of the Rings loves me. I can try, it doesn't feel anything. I can pretend someone dead like J.R.R. Tolkien loves me. It doesn't even work. Nothing happens. So we're gonna take a break, but I hope I had an enjoyable time. Just chilling, hanging out, reviewing my IPO notes. We will continue onward at some unspecified date and time. We have a lot to learn, and we're not afraid. I think I should practice this a little bit more, is take pictures of people that I think I would like to meet or talk to, that I'm scared of talking to, and just like throw them in all my presentations. So that means I have so much practice looking at them, talking to them, pretending I'm talking to them. That actually sounds like a very valid strategy. If you do that, all of a sudden, because come on, most of us are scared of talking to somebody. Maybe we're intimidated. by people of different demographics. But if we just like get good son, there's no reason. I mean, there's really no reason anyone should be scared of me. And there's no reason why I should be scared of other people. Bye.